Hello, everybody. I'm Logan Crawford, and this is the award-winning TV talk show right here on Ebru, Fresh Outlook. The first contest in the 2016 presidential race is history now, and depending on who you ask, it yielded some surprises. Donald Trump, according to the polls, was supposed to be the front runner, but so much for polls. Ted Cruz won it. On the Democratic side, well, maybe Hillary won, maybe Bernie won, maybe it was a tie. Those results are not as clear. Let's say hello to our panel of expert guests. I am joined by Dr. Jackie Guzda, media analyst from Western Connecticut State University, Alain Sanders, political science professor at St. Peter's University, and David Goodman represent us. He is with the New Jersey chapter. David, I will start with you. Ted Cruz winning this, big shock, no shock? What's your take?
Ted Cruz spent his money well, and he spent a lot of it. He had a good ground game, visited all 99 counties in Iowa, so I think he got his money's worth. And of course, he had the connection with the evangelical base in the Republican Party in Iowa, which is really probably unique in this country. I'm not sure he's going to be able to replicate that experience.
And he was pandering to them even on the night of his victory, where he came out and said, "Praise be to him," sounding much like a preacher. So much for the separation of church and state. It doesn't fly in Iowa. Did Ted Cruz, in your opinion, Alan, steal this race?
Well, he didn't steal it. He conducted it as a professional, and that's something that Donald Trump has to face. Certainly, there's an element of showmanship in any campaign, and that's where Mr. Trump is very good. He's a great showman. He knows how to put on a great show. But there needs to be organization. It's a professional job. And so while there's a showmanship component to it, there's also a ground game to it. And Ted Cruz showed that he was paying attention to that ground game. And so he succeeded. Also, the terrain was very favorable to him. The electorate, the Republican electorate in Iowa, is heavily evangelical, very conservative. There's a libertarian streak there. And so putting it all together, acting as a professional, conducting a professional campaign, and having a favorable electorate led him to victory.
And also not willing to get down and dirty, Jackie. He was sending out notices to people, reporting them for election violations,
yes,
and making phone calls, and perhaps spreading word that Ben Carson had dropped out of the race, which apparently wasn't the case. And Ben Carson was the other candidate in Iowa who was extremely likable because of his extreme Christian views.
Mm-hmm, right.
Tell me what your take on the Iowa caucuses are.
Well, I don't think that Ted Cruz was really playing that bad boy of a game. I think that he was just trying to win an election. So those things are small. I think the bigger issue here is how each of those candidates pandered to the evangelicals. Marco Rubio also plays a very good game, I think you would think. However, he's pretty straight with the issues. But he had to tag on Jesus Christ, our only Savior, which kind of flipped my head around.
Right.
Everybody, Donald Trump went to church.
Right.
Probably the first time.
And the church didn't fall down, as far as I know, but you never
yeah,
know.
Right.
But everyone suddenly cloaked themselves in a religious cloth, and it was disconcerting to many people who want religion kept out of it.
We do.
Watch out tonight. I'm going to just jump ahead for a second. Donald Trump, this is a prediction, is going to crucify, if I can use religious metaphor, he's going to crucify Ted Cruz over the Ben Carson thing. I don't think that's a small issue at all. He's going to, here's my prediction, open the envelope. He's going to demand that Cruz make a public apology.
But Cruz did.
Well, on TV at the debate.
Okay, for our viewers at home who don't watch this like we do, like it's our religion, Ted Cruz apparently helped spread the rumor that Ben Carson was not going on to New Hampshire. Instead, he was going home to Florida. It made it seem like he was going to drop out of the race, but that was not the case. Apparently, he was going home to get some clean clothes, which sounds kind of crazy in and of itself. Let's talk about Bernie and Hillary for a second, David. That was another very interesting race. You have a 74-year-old man who has almost never run as a Democrat before, who seems to be a communist, who looks a little out of sorts, and he's giving Hillary a run for her money. He might have actually even have won that caucus. It was down to a coin flip.
Yeah,
Tell me about this.
What are your thoughts? I won't go endorse the communist characterization, Logan, but I will say
if you take other people's money and spend it and spread it all around, that's communism, right?
Capitalism.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
no, it might be corporatism.
Exactly. So, but the wild card here, or maybe not the wild card, was that he captured, what was it, 84% of the 17,
Of the young people.
17 to 34%, whereas Hillary had 14% or something,
About
and Martin
that.
O'Malley had the remaining. I mean, come on, you cannot win an election or a caucus with that level of disparity when it comes to that particular demographic. So I think that was the major factor. He pulled up a substantial campaign and really came close to winning that.
I got to tell you, I'll let you chime in just a second, Alan. This was a whole reset. You realize that Donald Trump was not indefeatable. And you also realize that, maybe Bernie Sanders needs a closer look. So I did watch him more closely. I watched him at the town hall and I watched him at the debate this week. He's amazing. He's wonderful. His message really resonates with people. He's extremely likable. He's extremely sincere. His goals are very worthy goals. I don't agree with the means to get there, but everybody believes that people should have decent health care, should have prescription drugs, has a right to an education. So he has a message that resonates, I'll tell you, even with me, and I'm a libertarian/conservative.
Sure, and I think you've hit upon it. I mean, and one thing, there's several things we have to keep track of. First of all, races tend to tighten. I mean, when you have polls way out at the beginning, that's just what people think. Not necessarily what they will actually do. And of course, thinking can change over time. So early polls and what we've been talking about up until now, in some sense, is not exactly realistic. Though it does tell you something about, the mood of the electorate. So races tighten, and that's not surprising. What we have in the Democratic race is a very interesting phenomenon. Many people have said for a long time to the Democratic Party, Democrats to the Democratic Party, let the Democratic Party be democratic. And Bernie Sanders has hit into that vein. The Republicans have been very good at shifting the political ground over time since Ronald Reagan won the presidency. And Democrats have kind of walked the walk, and although they've adopted liberal positions, they've been less liberal over time. Bernie Sanders has said, let's go back to the way it was. Let's go back to the 1960s and 70s and really assert what liberalism is all about. Now, he calls it socialism, but it's really liberalism. There's no socialism, or very little, in what he says. So what you've got is he's making a rousing call to the Democratic base, let's go back to being Democrats, and that is resonating. Now, the issue for both of them is that both are attacking each other on their weak points. And so what the electorate, the Democratic electorate, will have to decide in the months ahead is, can you trust Hillary? That's what Bernie Sanders is asking. Can you trust Hillary? And Hillary Clinton is asking the question, can you afford Bernie? So what we've got is two very fundamental questions, and the electorate, the Democratic electorate, will get to answer that.
And Jackie, conventional wisdom is always that races are decided by the middle, not the extremes on the right or the left. So now here we have Barry Goldwater running against George McGovern. Who do the people choose?
How many electoral votes did George McGovern get the night of the
Zero,
election?
right?
I think, what did he get? One?
I don't even think he
got
carried his
Very
own
few,
state.
very
one
few.
state.
Right.
One state.
And did Barry Goldwater, did he have any
I don't
electoral
know.
votes? I don't know, but I know both were slaughtered. Both
Slaughtered.
were loved by their parties.
You know,
That's right.
before we dredge up history, which unfortunately most of our viewers won't remember, or maybe would be too young to remember, let's say that what we're still looking at here is an anti-establishment campaign in both parties. Right. I mean, it may be a stretch to talk about Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders in the same breath, but in fact, in some respects, they are appealing to that same alienated voter, a certain level of person who feels that the economy has moved beyond them. The economy has rebounded. They haven't been able to deal with it, the issues of income equality. Trump and Sanders are both talking about the dominance of super PACs in terms of the election. Neither one has it. Now, people sort of scratch their heads or laugh when you mention that and Donald Trump in the same sentence. But the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump has pretty much gotten a free ride. He's not had to spend any money at all.
Well, he's had a very wise public relations campaign, Jackie. That's part of what he's done.
Right. I think that David hit on it, is that these candidates have not been listening to the people. I think the basis of this is that income inequality. You look at the 1970s, you could have a high school education, you could raise kids, you could take them to a ball game.
And have a factory job.
Factory job. Now, let me finish.
Sure.
You look at Trump supporters who are mostly undereducated, high school, they have kids. What their dads had in the 1970s, if you look at the charts, what they have now is hardly anything.
Right.
They're disenfranchised, they're disgusted, they have no way out, they're frustrated. Trump hit on it. Now, he hit on it for his own purposes, to make himself president of the United States. Bernie Sanders is listening, but I also want to throw out that if you listen to the message of Hillary, it's not that different from Bernie's.
Yeah, but Hillary keeps on tailoring her message, and it seems disingenuous.
She's
That's the problem.
a better machine.
But listen, I think
I don't know about that.
I think people are voting their emotions with Bernie, and people are voting their emotions with Trump. Certainly because Bernie has wide appeal among youth. That tells you that he's appealing to emotions. Young people react very well to those kinds of appeals.
Or values.
Now, well, values and emotions. Yeah. But again, it boils down to what do you think versus what do you do. As you get more serious and you face the prospect of who is actually going to be president, I think you move from what do I think? Well, I think this, but on the other hand, what's realistic? And so I think that Hillary and the mainstream Republican candidates are banking on that shift of thinking from what do I think, what do I like, what do I not like, to what is realistic. And that's what, and if you saw the debate, I think that's exactly what Hillary was playing to in the way she handled the debate. And we'll have to see whether the Republican mainstreamers will do the same thing tonight.
Well, I think Alan is correct on that. And I think that Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders would make a fantastic ticket.
Interesting you say that. They are very nice to each other, very cordial to each other. There hasn't been much bloodletting in
last
that.
Thursday,
they're getting into it a little bit.
Feisty, and
I think Hillary felt like she had to fight back.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you get hit and don't hit back, you lose.
It's going to be
in any arena.
It's going to be a hell's a poppin' tonight.
I mean, you got to take the offensive. In politics, as in any kind of sport, you have to take the offensive. Defense is not enough.
Especially if you're a woman.
So let's talk about New Hampshire for just a second. Sure. New Hampshire seems to be a whole new ball game. It tends to be a libertarian state, yet a liberal state. Jeb Bush apparently is doing well there. Well, you 9%? Know what? Well, it's better than 0%, and apparently he's polling second according to some polls. So I would think to Democrats he'd be a little more palatable than Cruz or Rubio or Trump, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think if I had my choice of who I wanted to run on the Republican ticket, I'd probably pick Trump. Trump, believe it or not.
Because, like Jimmy Carter said, he's the most malleable? That's what Jimmy Carter said the other day.
Did he say that?
He said,
I agree with Jimmy Carter.
He said, the good thing about Trump is he really has no conviction.
That's right.
That he is malleable and he'll do what the people want.
You're going
to see.
Right.
He said, if I were to endorse a Republican, I would want. You're going
to see two battle lines tonight. This is my prediction. You're going to see Trump and Cruz go after each other. It's going to be vicious. And you're going to see the governors attempt to trash Marco Rubio because one or two of those governors is not going to survive after New Hampshire. I think Bush has got enough money and enough momentum to go into South Carolina. So even if he doesn't do as well as the poll numbers suggest that you've mentioned, Logan, he'll survive. It's Kasich and Christie, rather, who are in trouble.
Let me bring up one other name, and it's interesting the importance of optics in all of this. You think Ted Cruz is older, but Marco Rubio is actually older than Ted Cruz, yet Chris Christie is calling him the boy in the bubble. A lot of people say that if there was a big winner during the Iowa caucuses, it was Marco Rubio. Tell me what your thoughts on that.
Sure, and I think that's true. He comes out of Iowa with great momentum. But remember, this is a long-distance game. And the mainstream candidates, Christie, Bush, and Kasich, want to slow down that momentum, certainly tonight and in New Hampshire. Now watch Kasich. I'm not saying that he will necessarily win, but he has been spending a lot of time, like Christie, in New Hampshire. And there is a suggestion that he may be on the move there because he's spent a lot of one-on-one time. Rubio has not spent that much time in New Hampshire. Certainly he's a poster boy. He's attractive. He knows how to speak well. He knows how to debate well. But he hasn't had as much of a ground game as Kasich has had and as Jeb Bush has had. So again, we have to take a look at audience appeal versus organization. And that really is what New Hampshire is going to tell us. Does organization trump, if I can use that word, because Trump has the same problem. Not very good organization.
Let me get
Trump.
Jackie in on the Rubio conversation. What do you think of Rubio as a candidate? Also, this is a whole different ball game in New Hampshire because it's not a caucus where you're standing on one side of the room or the other. You actually go and vote, where there's less manipulation of the actual participants.
Right. I think he appeals more to the New Hampshire voter. However, I don't think it's his time yet. He's more middle of the road. He speaks to the people. I think he needs more time to kind of saturate into our consciousness here. Maybe next time. We'll see what happens.
And he does seem too young for the job, according to me.
He does. What we need to do, I mean, me as a citizen of the United States, I don't want to see Ted Cruz come anywhere near the White House.
I'll tell you, as a conservative and a libertarian, and I often give my opinion, he seems creepy to me. I don't think I'd vote
crazy
for him.
creepy.
It's very hard to find anybody who likes him. His colleagues, his friends, and
So
his,
maybe Trump
his college
is
friends
a
as well.
nasty guy.
So here's what I'll say in response to Jackie's character.
10 seconds, we're running
You've
out
got
of
it. Rubio is the Republican Barack Obama for 2016.
Well, Barack Obama was more on the fast track. But yeah, I think Rubio can come up, and I welcome that.
I think Rubio looks like an overambitious high school valedictorian.
Okay, and you've also got to keep this in mind. 60% of the voters in Iowa voted for either a black man or a Hispanic. That is historic. It is not noted by the mainstream media. When we come back, we will take a look at the history of politicians using music without permission after this.